I'm Robarge, a relationship coach. Welcome to Improve Your Relationships, where I like to talk about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. And this video is about being stuck in a relationship. You can't leave, and you know it needs to end, but you're unable to end. And your mind is looping back and forth. Sometimes you're a detective trying to collect evidence of why you should leave. And then other times you're a detective trying to collect evidence of why you should stay. And you go back and forth, stay, leave, stay, leave, stay, leave. And it reinforces, you're creating more confusion with this looping mind, and you're creating more paralysis and inaction with this looping mind. And instead of leaving, instead of putting your effort and energy into resources and building up your resolve and creating a clear plan to leave, you distract yourself and create avoidance through faulty thinking. You essentially keep confusing yourself. And we use our own faulty thinking to rationalize and justify why we need to stay in a relationship that ultimately that we know is bad or over or stale, dead, unhealthy, dysfunctional, maybe full of resentment, maybe full of contempt for each other. Whatever the reason is, if it's from mild to extreme, you know it's over, it's done, and you keep looping in this place of confusion because you're unable and unwilling to move forward with an ending. So this video is to highlight some of these ways of thinking, this faulty thinking that we have. And in fact, this video is a mashup trying to pull together all of these different types of forms of thinking, or these different approaches to our rationalizing, or different approaches to justifying why we're stuck and why we stay. And I say it's a mashup video because there's actually, I've made a series of videos, one video per different style of thinking, and you can check those out. And in fact, those are 8 different videos. And this video is a compilation of all of those. So my intent is to name the inner voice, or give examples of the inner voice, these inner thoughts, and how we keep looping and confusing ourselves. But before I do, let me identify what the specific categories or areas that I'm referring to, the different approaches of faulty thinking. One is catastrophizing, that we catastrophize the situation, which means that we only see the worst possible outcome. We also exploit empathy. That's another way that we use our sentimentality, we romanticize sentimentality and see the other person through this very hyper lens, or this hyper exploited empathy, so that it obscures the fact that the other information that you see around the bad behavior, or that you don't have certain, the partner doesn't have certain skills to relate, and you kind of bypass the reality by moving into this sentimentality, this exploiting the empathy to force yourself to stay, because you say, well, but I love him, but I love her. And as if that's justification for being in a bad relationship. There's also using shame. You can dump shame on yourself. Shame is self-aggression. Shame being hard on yourself. And if you're hard enough on yourself, you can belittle your own worth to the point where you're unable to have agency and a strong sense of self so that you can take action and leave. And so you reinforce staying paralyzed by calling yourself names and being hard on yourself and believing that you're flawed. So that is a certain approach, a certain kind of mind game that you can play with yourself. Now, if that's aggression towards yourself, you could also flip into a rather kind of righteous anger, a bitter anger, where you find fault with your partner, and your thinking is going to be rooted in anger, and it's going to be a temper tantrum that doesn't quite resolve itself. And it's not anger for the sake of protecting yourself, and it's not anger for the sake of integrating the insight that comes from the anger. It's more anger that fuels more anger. It's anger that begets more anger. It's hot anger that just burns you. and you do this by disparaging your partner. And you can get lost in that place, and you can spend hours there thinking bitter, resentful thoughts. You can spend days there thinking your partner's a horrible person. And that's one way that you can distract yourself enough so you don't have to look at why you're actually stuck and that you're not taking action and moving forward with ending this relationship. Now, what we could also do, another form of faulty thinking, has to do with hyper-analyzing details to the point where the details that you're noticing are so incongruent, maybe even insignificant, but everything that happens, whether your partner texts you or doesn't text or says this something and doesn't say something else, and how you're observing the interaction between you and your partner, you are latching onto a bunch of little details of information, and you're trying to order them into a pattern to prove that he's a jerk, or to prove that this relationship is a mess and you have to leave. Even though you already know this, you already know that it's over. You're already for some time deep down. I mean, really, when you look in the mirror, you know it's time to end. But instead of taking action, you get stuck in hyper-analyzing the story. And it's, at times, it could literally be like a lot of talking, a lot of thinking. You could call up a girlfriend, your boyfriend, you call up, someone you go to coffee with, and then you just talk, and you're analyzing, well, then he said this, then he said this, then he did this, and 6 months ago she did that. That's another way that we distract ourselves. Now, there's also looking for some kind of savior, looking for some kind of great magical excuse, something that's going to save your relationship. And when you find it, you get all, you completely consume yourself and believe. You just completely give over to believing that, yes, now we can save this relationship. And one way that we do this is through therapy and the idea of counseling and couples counseling. And you get all worked up that you're gonna be a great salesman or saleswoman, and you're gonna convince your partner, we gotta go to therapy now, and the therapist will save us, and the therapy experience will save us, and we're all going to, have amazing personality overhauls and some grand psychological download of complete new information of how we can heal. And it'll be hard work, but we're on board, we're gonna do it. So if you use that kind of thinking, that could be a distraction also. And you're really just lying to yourself. You're grasping for something that's going to, make this work, and that you say, but the truth is you don't even want this relationship. Not only are you lying to yourself that it's over, telling yourself to stay when it's over, you also repeatedly, you lie to yourself that you even want this. You go through the motions, you get worked up, you're fighting for a relationship that ultimately you don't want to work. Your intention is very incongruent. And this is how we are out of integrity. We're at a state of great imbalance because we're fighting for something that deep down we really don't want. And so that's going to greatly limit our efforts of achieving something, because ultimately our heart's not in it. And a lot of this faulty thinking, the rationalizing, the justifying, is trying to convince ourselves, trying to give ourselves a good pep talk of why we must, fall in love with this person again, or why we must settle. I can settle. It's a relationship of convenience. Let's just settle. It's not that bad. And then we're weighing our options. Well, if I leave or if I stay and this happened, like we're trying to make a decision like buying a house. We're trying to, weigh our pros and cons. And I'm sorry, relationships don't work like that. It's not that practical. It's not that grounded in, there's other fundamental relational connection that must be happening organically, and where you must keep feeding intentional, emotional intimacy and responsiveness. And when you share in this level of emotional attunement, then there's no convincing. You have to convince yourself, that is this a practical relationship, or, does this, objectively make sense? When you have a good, solid foundation of a relationship, you can make it work. It's not about looking at it like you're applying for a loan at a bank. So using therapy as a savior and using hyper-analyzing to try to make sense of something that you ultimately know you don't want to be in, that's just one big distraction. And this whole video is about how we just keep ourselves stuck in distraction after distraction. And then lastly, the category, another category here has to do with scheming and manipulating our partner to force staying and trying to, we sort of override. This has to do with being dishonest with ourselves, but we're no longer really looking at the reality of our skill set to be in relationship or the reality of our partner's ability to be in a relationship. What we're doing is we just have to force it. We must be in this relationship, and I must make this person like me, and I must behave in ways to get the outcome that I desire. So this strong aggression, this asserting, having this incredible eagerness, and this has to do with when people are trying to get an ex back, and they believe they can do things like provoke jealousy. If I can make my partner jealous, then they're going to be attracted to me, and then therefore we'll get back together. It's a lot of fantasy thinking. So scheming and manipulating has to do with believing in your fantasy, and like that you have all this control and you're going to force your partner to be with you. So these are the different areas. Again, there's other videos about each of these areas to explain it more. And then now what I just want to do is take all these areas, and I like to think of it as like a mental health cocktail. We can create certain states of mind when we put certain ingredients into our mind. So if we put them in, stir them up, mix them up, shake them up, and we might get anxiety and distress. We might get confusion. We might get more paralysis. And that's what I'm proposing with all of these different kinds of forms of faulty thinking, and how you continually disempower yourself, and through distracting yourself with these kind of thoughts, you're creating a mental health cocktail, an outcome where your mind is more confused, and where your mind feels more anxiety and distress, and where you just feel stuck. And that because we are employing these different kinds of faulty thinking, we could look at it as an equation, and it equals staying stuck. And here's an example of using these different categories just to mirror back to you what it sounds like when we run through all of them. Maybe they'll be mixed up a little bit, maybe they won't. But we get to a place where in catastrophizing we say, I'll be alone forever. I'll be alone forever. And if I leave, I'll ruin the kids' lives. I can't leave because I'm going to ruin the kids' lives. And I got to stay together for the kids because, if they change schools, and it ruins their year at school, and my partner will kill himself. He's unstable, or she'll have a nervous breakdown and she'll lose her job. So we can't end because, if that happens, I don't want to be responsible for that. If we end, it's financial ruin. We're going to have to sell the house. We're not going to be able, we don't have the right enough credit to get a new mortgage. We're not able to afford an apartment, so we have to move to a different part of town. Everything is a catastrophe. Everything is ruined. And, there's just no way we can end this relationship without everyone being devastated. Now, at the same time, I don't want to leave because I see how sweet she is. She's just on the outside, at times she's mean, she's gruff. She's no angel, but on the inside, she's actually a beautiful, sweet, lovely person, and I could never treat her the way her family treated her. I'm not going to be that person. I'm gonna rise above, and I see how she's a beautiful person, and that I feel such sadness for her, and I want to love her more, and I want to offer her unconditional love. And I can't leave this relationship because it's my obligation, it's my duty. I believe to my core that I'm going to love her in a way that she's never been loved before. And when she finally softens and opens and lets in my love, then I know our relationship will really flourish. And the thing is, that as I keep telling myself that, I say it enough, and then it clicks in how it doesn't make sense what I'm saying, because I'm an idiot. I don't know why I keep pulling the wool over my eyes and believing this. I've been doing this for years. I've been wasting time and wasting my life because I'm a nobody and I'm a loser and I'm a horrible person. And if I leave, I'll never be loved anyway. I mean, he's the best I can do. He or she's the best I can do. And if I have to force myself to leave, I'm signing up for a life. This is my last time. This is my last shot at being loved, because deep down, I'm not lovable. And deep down, I'm broken and I'm a mess of a person. And when someone really gets to know me, they're not interested. They're out the door because I'm flawed. There's something wrong with me. And the truth is, now that I think about it, there's something wrong with her. There's something wrong with him. He's a jerk. You know, it's like the way he treats me, the way that I keep saying, you got to text. If you go to work and you're there for like 5 hours, don't you think within a 5-hour period you could at least text once? You know, you're so nasty. You're such, I mean, I just don't understand why she has to be such a horrible, nasty person to the core. And that's why I don't want to be with her. I think if we could hone in on her problems and on my problems, and again, you know, this might be, you know, play with genders, whoever it is, you know, his problem, her problem, whatever. I think we need therapy. And if we could just go to couples counseling this time seriously, I mean, like really go and like really like commit and sign up, and I you know, at this point too, I'll pay anything. You know, let's even get, it doesn't even matter. We want to get the best therapist, and we're going to go twice a week, and we're going to read books, and we're going to write in a journal. And we're going to really do all this healing work because we're going to save this relationship. And I have to tell my partner, I have to get my partner on board with doing this. But you know, we did try therapy 6 months ago, and she didn't follow through. And then we were in the parking lot, and I remember it really clearly because I had written in my journal, and I left the journal in the car, and then I went into therapy, and then I realized that she had read my journal, and she had looked at the page that I had it turned to, which was me expressing my anger. But then when she went into therapy, she was all shut down, and then she wouldn't participate. And that happened 6 months ago. And so now if I think about trying, you know, when I think about getting her on board to come to therapy, she's not going to come because she just enters therapy being shut down. I just think what I have to do, I just have to put it all beside. I just have to like stop. I have to be sweet. I'm going to be really, really sweet. I'm going to make dinner. I'm going to be on really good behavior. I'm going to buy tickets to a concert. I'm going to take us out, and I'm going to force him to fall in love with me. He's not going to know what happened because I'm going to look great. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to like be sexy. And when he sees me with other people, oh, he's going to really know that I'm such a great, amazing catch. And in this way, I'm going to make him mine. And again, play with gender. You can say, I'm going to make her mine. So this was an attempt to run through how we get into these patterns. And not only do we stay in one, but we flip around constantly. And if you keep doing it, you're cultivating more. Your mental health cocktail is producing more anxiety, more distress, more confusion, and more paralysis, which is why you're stuck, which is why you're watching this video. So if you want to work with these thoughts, if you want to try to pull out of the thinking, one way to do it is don't get so caught up in the content. It's not so much what you're saying or the actual words or the ideas. It's being able to step back and have a bit more of an observer self and look at the content and not believe it. You don't have to believe it. So when you shame yourself, you stupid idiot, you're flawed, you're broken as a human being, no one's going to love you anyway. And then you just say, high shame thinking, I know you're there. And you label, well, that's a shame thought. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to get hooked into it. You don't have to get sucked into dialoguing and entertaining it. Same idea when you get the great, bright idea, well, we got to go to therapy, and I'm going to go hurry up and go do a Google search for therapists in the area now, and I'm going to run to the bookstore and buy this book on couples counseling, and you stop. You pull back and say, well, I'm noticing I want to use therapy as a savior. I'm getting caught up. Notice how the hook, notice you get sucked into, and you're like a puppet. And it amps up energy, and you get speedy, and your mind starts bouncing around. So then we just label it and say, hey, solution-focused mind, you want to go to therapy. I hear you. We're not going to entertain it. We're not doing a Google search. We're not like trying to call a therapist and book a time on a calendar. We're just saying, well, isn't that interesting? Notice how my mind keeps sucking me back into this kind of thinking. Same thing when you are dumping your anger, fueling your resentment, fueling your bitterness, and you feel so justified. You feel so justified that your partner is a mean, nasty person, and you're just so angry at how they failed you. And you take a moment of noticing how you're fueling your own contempt, and you're fueling your own bitterness, and you're fueling your resentment. And you can just step back and say, you don't have to take it seriously. You don't have to believe those thoughts. You say, well, there's anger, high anger thoughts. I know you're there. You don't necessarily have to keep feeding them. So if you're looking at these different categories, we're identifying how you keep feeding them. And we want to interrupt the process to pull back, to have a bit more of an objective mind, an observer self mind. And maybe even you can use my words, you could use your words, but name some of the categories to just say, oh, that's catastrophizing. Oh, I'm thinking the worst right now. Hi, thinking the worst. Hi, mind. I know you think the worst right now. It's not necessarily true. I don't have to believe it. You don't have to invest in the belief that it's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to happen. But we do notice in the moment you're frightening yourself, and you're producing paralysis by creating an impossible outcome. Like someone's going to have a nervous breakdown and lose their mind. Someone's going to commit suicide and kill themselves if the relationship ends. I mean, these are all, a lot of dead-end thinking. Who would want to end a relationship, if you convince yourself that, you're going to become suicidal. So, lastly, you have to remind yourself that the reason why you get sucked into this kind of thinking is you're actually avoiding yourself. You're avoiding your truth. You're avoiding being honest. And you're avoiding acting from integrity. And to act from integrity means to say, this relationship is over. It's stale. It's done. It's broken. It is not to be salvaged. You have known this for a long time. You're being dishonest with yourself, and you're not moving forward to end but instead you're going to distract yourself through avoidance. You want to avoid that you have to take action and end the relationship, and you have to confront your feelings of grief and confront your feelings of loneliness, confront your feelings of abandonment, whatever gets stirred and triggered for you. Instead of actually taking that head on, you're going to go over here and you're going to use these other kinds of faulty thinking to rationalize and justify, buying yourself a little more time so you can stay stuck. I hope that this video is helpful to you. If you like it and want to see more just like it, please subscribe to this YouTube video. And then also, if you want to learn more about me or learn more about the community membership website that I'm creating, you can go to my website, which is alanrobarge.com. Thank you for watching.